Now to the latest on the coronavirus emergency as the United States approaches 200,000 deaths. Those are just some of the victims across the country you are seeing right there. And cases, they are on the rise in at least 33 states as the CDC, the nation's leading voice on public health, is under fire again for walking back guidance, this time on how the virus spreads. Tom Yamas joins us with more this morning. Good morning, Tom.
Yeah, Michael, good morning to you. A lot of headlines about the coronavirus overnight, including from the CDC, saying how they're going to distribute that vaccine once it's approved. And as we mentioned at the top of this broadcast, President Trump telling supporters just last night, as America faces 200,000 deaths tied to the virus, he was telling his supporters falsely that the virus affects virtually nobody.
This morning, COVID confusion. The CDC reversing new guidance on how the coronavirus spreads indoors. On Friday, the agency posting new guidelines suggesting COVID-19 can transmit farther than 6 feet, like in choir practice, restaurants, and workout classes. And that ventilation indoors is key, aligning with information medical experts like Dr. Anthony Fauci have been talking about.
If you have any degree of aerosolization, and you are in an indoor space where the air is being circulated, that it makes sense to assume that that is a much greater risk than if you are outside.
But those guidelines removed from the CDC's website Monday morning. Hours later, the CDC saying the guidelines were an early draft posted by mistake.
We weren't ready to put it up. It can possibly be transmitted through the airborne route, but that this is not the main mode of transmission, that the main mode of transmission remains close exposure within that 6-foot circumference of a person who's infected.
On Monday, with the U.S. approaching that horrific milestone of 200,000 deaths linked to the virus, Joe Biden attacking the president for how he's dealt with the pandemic.
All his life, Donald Trump has been bailed out of any problem he faced. And with this crisis, a real crisis, the crisis that required serious presidential leadership, he just wasn't up to it. He froze. He failed to act. He panicked. And America's paid the worst price of any nation in the world.
Overnight, the president again downplaying the danger.
It affects virtually nobody. It's an amazing thing.
President Trump trying to limit the scope of the virus, even though Americans of all ages have been infected.
It affects elderly people with heart problems and other problems. If they have other problems, that's what it really affects. That's it.
The president's comments come as the virus refuses to let up. Hospitalizations up in 17 states and deaths increasing in more than a dozen states, plus D.C. and Puerto Rico. Among those dying from the virus, 44-year-old Amanda Bufew, a mother of 2 from Alaska. Her partner Scott says people need to take the virus seriously.
I can't imagine 200,000 families going through what I'm going through right now. It's just mind-boggling. And it didn't have to happen this way.
And the CDC saying once a vaccine is approved, children won't be the first in line to get it. It's only being tested in adults right now, and it'll be distributed at distribution centers, not from your doctor or your local clinic. George?
Okay, Tom, thanks very much. Let's bring in Dr. Richard Besser, our former colleague who also used to run the CDC, now the CEO of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And Rich, let's begin with the president continuing to downplay the virus, the impact of this virus.
Yeah, I mean, George, we're approaching 200,000 deaths, and there has never been a public health crisis in my lifetime like this. When you have political leaders with one message that there's nothing to worry about, and every public health leader saying that this crisis is severe and our actions can save lives, it leads to the situation we have in America where so many people who are dying needlessly.
How about the situation of the CDC walking back this guidance again? Is this politics or incompetence?
Well, I think this one is a self-inflicted wound. The problem is there have been so many instances where there's been political fingerprints on CDC documents, and CDC hasn't been able to be out front to explain what's going on. It leads to an undermining of trust, and when you lose trust, you lose lives. CDC should be out there every day explaining what they're learning, explaining why guidance is changing. I talked to a leader at CDC, and I expect very soon there will be guidance up that talks about other routes of transmission, like aerosol protocols and what can be done to reduce the risk from that as well.
You talk about lost trust. This is coming as more and more Americans are saying they will not trust a vaccine if and when it comes out. How can we be sure it's safe and effective?
Well, we need hands-off of CDC and FDA so the approval process can go through the normal channels. And when you think about this loss of trust and loss of lives, every community is affected, but not equally. Black Americans, Latino Americans, Native Americans, low-income Americans are being hit the hardest. And so when people downplay the significance of this, there are certain groups that are really paying the price.
Finally, Rich, we are heading into fall. We're seeing cases rise here in the United States. Over in Europe, they're announcing new lockdowns. What should we be expecting as we head into the fall?
Well, I think that's always a possibility, George. We're going to be seeing, in addition to COVID, we'll be seeing flu and other respiratory viruses. And as we go indoors and viruses do better in the winter, we may see some of the restrictions needing to be rolled out again. That's something people should anticipate.
Dr. Rich Besser, thanks very much. Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.